You guys love getting editing advice, so I was thinking, what better way to do that than to actually sit down with one of your projects? The project that I'm going to be working on tonight is sent in by Vic.illustrations. Thank you so much, Vic, and I am so sorry for getting to this so late. Better late than never, I guess. Anyway, let's just jump straight into this. So we're going to be editing your first page together, and hopefully you'll get some good feedback and maybe some inspiration. And most importantly, we're gonna learn something that you can use towards your own project. At least I hope so. I do want to emphasize that a lot of this stuff that I'm going to rework here is not actually stuff that I would touch up on your behalf in a developmental edit. In a developmental edit, I would actually just point out some of my thoughts, give you some suggestions, leave you a comment on how to fix it, rather than actually go in and change anything for you. And then in a line edit, I would probably just retouch your sentences and the flow of stuff. But for the sake of this video, we're going to be mixing both of these together, line editing and developmental editing. And for the sake of learning, we're going to treat this more like a teaching / feedback session rather than like a demonstration of what you might expect an editor to do to your work. Just because I've seen a lot of comments on some of my editing videos about like, oh my god, the editor just changes everything and it's no longer the author's work. No, that's not how editing works. These videos are purely educational and they're mostly aimed towards authors who are trying to self-edit really well and just learn how to write stronger prose. So that out of the way, let's just jump in and read out the example that we are going to be working with. Chapter 1, Night Terrors. Peter walked with eyes firmly anchored to the ground and mumbled something barely human every time someone crashed into him. He hated Hesiar. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that, but I'm just gonna roll with it. Hesiar. The city smelled of angry people, dirt, and cheap alcohol. The sounds coming from every direction were too loud and forceful. Merchants selling their wares, carriages rushing by and pushing people away, singing from numerous pubs and dens, as if the sheer volume of their voices could hide that nobody was listening. But most of all, he hated his father for standing by the king and doing nothing to fix this misery. No matter where he was, the castle towers always peeked out above the rooftops, reminding everyone below just how much they didn't matter. You couldn't get truly lost under their ever-present gaze. Chiming of the nearest clock tower made his heart drop and step quicken. He was late to school and a punishment awaited him. As if the school itself wasn't punishment enough, training to be a dragon slayer is the greatest honor. As if anyone has seen a dragon in the past 3 centuries. Everything always had to be about dragons because dealing with the real issues was too boring. He sped to a run anyway. No need to draw even more attention to himself. At this point, he was expert in keeping his opinions to himself. Everyone seemed to dislike him the moment they laid their eyes on him, no matter how hard he tried or how well he did. Father and stepmother hated him, and everyone either followed in their tracks or had to face scrutiny from the rest. The building appeared before him. The massive gate was half open, no guard in sight. He crossed the courtyard and the smell of sweat, iron, and old leather kicked his nose. Not a single soul was in the hallway. Bad sign. His attempt at sneaking in was foiled by a cursed squeaking door. 20 pairs of eyes turned his way. Late again, barked the master as his face reached the color of a tomato. Only the scar around his missing ear remained stark white. Sorry, Peter said, pointedly looking at his boots instead of eyes. Someone emptied a chamber pot on them without the master noticing. You are lucky we haven't started yet. You will be sharpening swords afterwards. Peter took his place in line and thanked the gods. This didn't classify as punishment in his book. He was used to far worse. The lesson dragged on, and standing motionless in one spot was a terror. He could recite how to identify a half-dragon perfectly at this point. Pointed ears, strange irises, inhuman strength, like every second creature. Okay, I'm gonna put my thinking pen in, because this is just gonna be my editing look, my editing vibe with the pen behind my ear. That's what I've decided. When I have the pen in, I'm in editing mode. Okay, let's get back to the first paragraph and we will start there. We'll start with the first couple of sentences and kind of break this down and see what's going on. So firstly, obviously, this opening is about Peter. Peter's our protagonist. We are in third person limited. We are in past tense and we are going to class, I think, to learn how to be a dragon slayer. And what we know about Peter from this first passage is that he hates his parents and his parents hate him. And Pretty much everybody hates him, and he's not a fan of the monarchy, but the monarchy is ever present, and he's kind of forced to be in this situation that he doesn't want to be in. He doesn't want to be learning about dragons. That's a good position to have your protagonist in, to start off your book kind of pessimistic, I guess, and under a clear constriction, which is, yeah, it's always a good sign that there's some kind of internal conflict and there's some kind of discomfort and something that Peter wants to change, basically. That's coming through really nicely from this opening. Now let's jump into going a little bit more in detail. So obviously your opening sentence is one of the most important parts of a novel. We all know the pressure that we face about opening sentences. And the thing that's sticking out to me personally is we have a lot of uncertainty in the first sentence, which I would advise against in any sentence, but especially in the opening sentence. You have two of these sort of trigger words that I would recommend you look out for, and that is something and someone. Another one would be somehow, some way, or anything that's kind of undetermined, kind of, sort of, that kind of thing. These two words really weaken the specificity of the point that you're trying to make. What is it that he mumbled? What is it that he actually said? And what does something barely human mean in this context? Because we are in a fantasy setting, and, you know, something barely human could actually mean something different in this world. It might signal to the fact that he's a different species or something, but we don't know that in the context of a first sentence. And I think if you open with something that's left too much to interpretation, you are going to lose the kind of punch of what your opening could be. And then obviously we have every time someone crashed into him. So you could specify who the someone is, like a drunkard or a guard or somebody who's in a merchant in a hurry or something like that. He hated Hesiar, so I like this sentence. I think this is a strong second sentence, but we need a stronger first sentence to lead us to the sort of punch of, like, he hated Hesiar. So we know immediately, clearly, where this feeling is coming from. So I'm thinking for this first sentence, I'm gonna change this part, so mumble something barely human to something just a little bit maybe more evocative of personality of your character, which, again, I don't have any context on him other than this first page. So I'm just gonna make wild assumptions that are probably going to be completely incorrect for your project, but for the sake of learning. So we're gonna say something like cursed, I think, just to make it a stronger reaction. I am wondering whether this character maybe doesn't speak up for himself, though, so we might add cursed in his head, or cursed under his breath, just because he doesn't want to be heard by the other people, but he does get peeved. He's just not confrontational. Every time someone crashed into him, and then we're going to change that someone, a raggedy drunkard or something like that. A raggedy drunkard crashed into him. He hated Hesiar. The city smelled of angry people, dirt, and cheap alcohol. So one thing that's coming to me with this sentence is I'm not exactly sure what angry people smell like. Maybe like piss, dirt, and cheap alcohol or something like that, just because you already had an allusion to piss in the second page. So I think maybe that's a signal to what kind of place this is. I thought potentially we could have a stronger word here, so we could say reeked of piss, dirt, and cheap alcohol. And then I am going to just delete this sentence. I don't think it's really doing anything, considering we are going to hear the sounds, like the specific visuals and their sounds in the following sentence. So, for example, maybe go for a stronger verb than selling their wares, belting up prices for their wares. Carriages rushing by, pushing people away. So we could say clunky carriages creaking by or something. Ooh, we're going for alliteration. Creaking by, and I think creaking is not the right word here, because creaking is slowing things down a little bit, and we want this to be chaotic, right? So let's go for clunky carriages clanging. Is that too much alliteration? I don't know. You guys tell me. You could probably change the word clunky to something else. if you didn't want the alliteration, if it's a little bit too much. Clunky carriages clanging, I think that's a stylistic preference, but I'm quite a fan of alliteration, so I'm just gonna leave it. Clunky carriages clanging by and pushing people out of the way, or chasing people out of the road. I wouldn't say away, maybe out of the road. Singing from the numerous pubs and inns. Okay, so again, numerous is like not a word that I love as an editor because it just signals to me that you're trying to sort of fill visual space and you don't actually know specifically what your world looks like or what the street looks like, for example, here. So I would maybe try and be more specific, or even you just don't have to use the name, the word numerous. You could just say singing from the corner pubs, and we don't need dens either. We could just say corner pubs because it's kind of the same thing, right? And then one more thing that I wanted to do with a sentence, now that we have it, is because we deleted the first one, it's not going to make sense on its own, right? We're just going to transform it into just a regular, we're in past simple. Sorry, I just edited like a whole manuscript in present tense. So I'm just like, what tense are we in? Merchants belted out prices for their wares. Clunky carriages clanged and chased people. Oh, that's not the right letters. Chased people out of the road. Oh, that's also not the right letters. Songs traveled from the corner pubs. I think that's what we're gonna do for this one. As if the sheer volume of their voices could hide that nobody was listening. What does that mean, nobody was listening? I think from the context of the sample that you sent, that he's talking about the royalty or the higher ups or the monarchy or whatever. But what you described so far just doesn't sound like misery. It just sounds loud and rowdy. But people selling their things aggressively and singing in pubs isn't really a sign that something's wrong with the society, you know what I mean? I am gonna try to make the best of this with what little information I have though, so let me think on it, and I'm gonna see what I can do with these next couple of sentences in order for them to make sense with what we already did.
A few moments later.
Okay, I'm just gonna jump in here and read you what I painstakingly wrote. Took me a whole half an hour. No, I'm joking. It took me a few minutes, but I just went with, it didn't matter. Underneath all that noise was a miserable silence no one dared to address. I do think that, rather than dismantling your first image of the noise of the town and how Peter feels uncomfortable, we can kind of build this slightly more layered approach where, the noise isn't inherently a factor that contributes to the misery. It is more so what hides underneath the noise. It's more like a mask that we're building up that the entire town is, participating in. I would delete then these couple of sentences, and I'm going to tell you why. I think we're going to just incorporate the father detail into the next line. Or the one after, but let's see. No matter where he was, the castle towers always peeked out above the rooftops, reminding everyone below just how much they didn't matter. And I actually quite like this line. I don't know if I'm going to change anything here. The only thing that I might nitpick here is whether we could just use a stronger verb here. So instead of peeked out above the rooftops, we could just say towered over the, no, we can't because we already used the word castle towers. Unless we just say the castle always towered over. This is why we have the pen. Okay, the castle always towered over the rooftops, reminding everyone below just how much they didn't matter. Just because it gives you more of a visual of like grandeur and like the eye in the sky type of thing, rather than just like peeked out above. Peeked out is just like, it's kind of cutesy, but we want that sort of overbearing, almost claustrophobic vibe to it, right? You couldn't truly get lost under their ever-present gaze. I would just delete that one because I feel like that one's just kind of driving the point home. Yeah, I think the first sentence already does all the heavy lifting for that. So instead of this last line, let's return to the father detail and see whether we can squish this in somewhere.
1 hour later.
I have an idea for the last line, so bear with me. And on the rare occasion that the castle was out of sight, His father never failed to bring up the king's, we could say the king's grace or whatever's relevant to the plot here. Like, what is it that the father worships about the king? But I'll just stick with grace for the time being. That's just the first one that came to me, and I'm already spending so much time on this, so let's just keep moving. I would say chimes of the nearest clock tower made his heart drop and step quicken. He was late to school and a punishment awaited. So we don't need him, definitely. He was late to school and a punishment awaited. And we need a comma there. As if the school itself wasn't punishment enough. Oh, also just like a quick tip for the comma thing. The reason that we need a comma is because we have two different subjects. So the first subject of the first half of the sentence is he, and the second subject of the second part of the sentence is a punishment. If it was the same subject, like he was late to school and he was going to be punished, then we don't need comma. Training to be a dragon slayer is the greatest honor. So this is, I assume, like a thought or something. I would maybe encourage you to give us just a little bit more context on that. Like, where is that voice coming from? Is that propaganda, or is it like someone's specific voice? And can you actually like hint at who it is? We don't necessarily need to immediately find out who that someone is, or where this sort of saying is coming from, but I would love a hint for that, just to build questions out in your readers' heads. As if anyone has seen a dragon in the past 3 centuries. So I'm just going to note that you have 2 sentences here that start the same way, and they're not like, it doesn't seem to be an aphra or anything like that. So I would probably change one of these. I would say, though attendance was punishment enough. Though attendance was punishment enough, training to be a dragon slayer is the greatest honor. As if anyone has seen a dragon in the past 3 centuries. So we would say had seen, because you're already writing in past. So we're not going to be using present perfect. We're going to be using past perfect. Everything always had to be about dragons because dealing with the real issues was too boring. So I'm not going to edit this, but I would comment on this, and I would tell you that you're being way too vague here. What are the real issues that are bugging Peter? Why are they important, and why does he find them boring? And maybe I would even encourage you to think about it in a different way other than boring, because they might be a distraction rather than just boredom, because you kind of already had that built out in the first paragraph about, you know, this distracting nature of the loudness of the town. So maybe you can also kind of extend that to the dragons. So instead of calling the issues boring, you could say that they're being swept under the rug because, I don't know, the dragon propaganda is literally just there to like distract people. So I'm just gonna put like a little comment here, and I'm just gonna highlight that so we know what the comment is referring to. And the reason that I'm just putting these comments in the actual text is just so that you guys can see them on the screen all at once. Okay, he sped to a run anyway. So redundant words here, we don't need him to speed to a run. You could just say he ran anyway, or he sped up anyway. So either or works. I'll just say he sped up anyway. No need to draw even more attention to himself. At this point, he was expert in keeping his opinions to himself. So yes, you could use expert as in an adjective, but I would probably go for he was an expert in keeping his opinions to himself, just because it's a little more natural and draws less attention. Everyone seemed to dislike him the moment they laid their eyes on him. So another thing to point out here is seemed to dislike him. I would just go for everyone disliked him the moment that they laid their eyes on him, just because it's stronger and it allows your character more agency in like, this is what I know, this is what I believe, and I firmly believe it. So that's his sort of misbelief, the character misbelief, which is really good to have on the first page. I'm very happy that you managed to squeeze that in. So everyone disliked him the moment they laid their eyes on him. So laid eyes on him, you don't need there, that's just a redundant word, just making it a bit more clunky. No matter how hard he tried or how well he did. So again, this is a bit too vague for my liking, and I would really love some specific examples. So instead of like saying no matter how hard he tried or how well he did, you could tell us no matter how many dragon races he won, or like how many A+ he scored on his exams or something like that, just so that the sentence is giving us visual grounding in this success that he's trying to accomplish. Father and stepmother hated him, and everyone either followed in their tracks or had to face scrutiny from the rest. So I would want to know more about this and what you actually mean about that. Do they have influence? I would just say father and stepmother made sure of that. Because he says everyone disliked him, and we don't necessarily have to emphasize that father and stepmother also hate him, also dislike him. And then I would delete this sentence, and I would probably encourage you to just give us again an example of how they would make sure of that. Like, why are people following in their steps, and why do they need to face scrutiny? So I would put an example sentence after this. Okay, so I'm just gonna put in the parentheses, why do they have influence over other people's opinions? So you can answer that with a sentence after this one, and just give us a little bit more detail as to how they plant those rumors about him, and maybe hint at why. Okay, so the building appeared before him. We could again go with a maybe stronger verb here, loomed above him or something, loomed before him. The massive gate was half open, no guard in sight. So potentially this is just a creative suggestion, and you don't have to take it, but if we are going for a sort of very uncomfortable feeling, you could maybe do a little sort of simile or metaphor. So for example, the gate was half open, like an unhinged jaw of some kind of dragon, because this could obviously already show us the knowledge that he has with having to attend this massive training that he doesn't want to attend. So for example, you could just say like an unhinged jaw of a blue eyes white dragon. That's my Yu-Gi-Oh days coming through. But yeah, I think that would be a neat way to do a little bit of world building and a little bit of character building also, and ground us in the actual knowledge that he has, despite not wanting to have it. I think I would just take away the was. I should just say not a single soul in the hallway. Bad sign. Just puts us a little bit more directly into his observations. His attempt at sneaking in was foiled by a cursed squeaking door. So this is a passive sentence. I don't necessarily know if I would want to change that, because I quite like how his attempt at sneaking in was actually maybe not, maybe okay. His attempt at sneaking in fell through for the cursed squeaking door, for example. That way it's not passive. But again, I don't know if you would need to change that first one. You could keep the first one, but I just feel like I'm editing, and then there's going to be a passive sentence, and I know someone's going to be like, that's a passive sentence, you have to change it. You don't always have to change it, unless it's like a thing that you constantly fall back on. I think you can get away with a few passive sentences here and there. But just for the sake of learning, this is how you could make it active. 20 pairs of eyes turned his way. I like that. That's kind of a showstopper. I think one thing I would do, creative decision, is maybe single out the line like that. Late again, barked the master as his face reached the color of a tomato. Okay, that's a bit clunky. First of all, I think you might need to capitalize master. I don't know. I mean, it's obviously like down to your world building, but I would suggest that. I think it sounds better, looks better. We'll do this. Okay, we'll do this. We'll put a comma and we'll say, his face reddening like a tomato. Potentially an opportunity not to be cliche and to use this for your world building or for your character building. So yeah, so rather than saying tomato, which everybody knows is red, you could do something that's more specific to your story world. Only the scar around his missing ear remained stark white. Yeah, quite like that. That's good. Sorry, Peter said, pointedly looking at his boots instead of eyes. I'm having a bit of a pronoun issue here, and I had that when I first read this out, and I had to read this paragraph out several times to understand what you were saying here. Let's try and rephrase this. Master's boots. instead of eyes. Actually, we don't need instead of eyes, because that's implied. If he's looking at the boots, he's not looking at the eyes. And I would also put past perfect here, actually. Someone had emptied a chamber pot on them. So I would encourage you to give us a little bit more context on this one. Because I don't understand why they're standing still. And I think in the opening scene, we just need a little bit more grounding in the world. So like, why are they standing motionless? Okay, in the second to last sentence, I want to draw your attention to this word right here, recite, because it throws me off a little bit. Because if it's just a lesson, I would just remove this and say he could identify a half dragon perfectly at this point, if it's not an actual text that we are referencing. Pointed ears, strange irises, inhuman strength, like every second creature. And obviously this, I think I would put as every other creature, like every other creature. So all in all, final verdict from this sample and the limited amount of information that I have on your project, I would probably just gently encourage you to be more specific and utilize your world building, because you are writing a fantasy novel and it's about dragons from what we can tell. And I would try to drive the point on the dragon knowledge through showing us rather than telling us. So show us the knowledge. So for example, like this last paragraph shows us that he knows how to identify a half dragon, but that's really all we get. And it seems to be his biggest strife, that he is being forced to learn about this, but then he doesn't really reference it. So use those little windows of opportunity of when you can have like little similes or metaphors and lean on the knowledge that he has, so that you are showing us how well educated he is on dragons, rather than just telling us that he is that way. Yeah, in terms of your actual main character, I really liked that you leaned into that misbelief of him thinking that he's disliked by everybody and hated by everybody and just being an all-around pessimist. The only thing that I would warn you about in terms of Peter's character is not to make him sound too whiny, and not to rely on the telling of like, oh, everyone hates me and everyone dislikes me, because we've had that in the text a couple of times. And if a character has a misbelief, it's going to be less of an everyone hates me situation in the text, and more of just him behaving like everyone hates him rather than pointing it out, if that makes sense. Like, for example, he might expect certain types of reactions to himself or his presence, and he might, move through the streets kind of trying not to be noticed, trying to hide his face, trying to avoid people, trying to avoid conversations because he knows the outcome or something like that, rather than just driving the point home of, everyone hates me, womp womp. But yeah, this was a really good passage to work with. Thank you so much for sending that in. I am going to send you this sort of small file of feedback through your email address, and you can, have a look at it, take what works, leave what doesn't. It doesn't matter. I had a lot of fun sort of working with this, and I hope that everyone that watched this learned something. And if you have any other suggestions for Vic, please feel free to leave them in the comments, but be nice. Constructive criticism is welcome, but be nice. If you're not nice, I will block you. All we can do is promote solidarity in the writing community, and keep in mind that both writing and editing are very subjective sports. So thank you so much for sending this in. Okay, so if you want more than just a free little cleanup session like this, my annual wait list is fortunately for me, unfortunately for anybody who wants to work with me, it's already full, but my online courses are open, and Pro at Pros in particular will take you much deeper into the craft of writing. So links for that are going to be in the description, along with my newsletter if you want to keep up on updates and resources and the behind the scenes stuff. Until then, trust your heart and the words will come.